All right, so let's jump into this. Today's topic is something that I think we all think about, and you've obviously been thinking about all the psychology that's behind the health choices that we make. And you sent in a really interesting mix of psychology articles and different research and all that stuff. So it seems like you're ready to really go deep on this one.
Absolutely. And what's really cool is that we're not just going to be, just throwing definitions around.
Right.
We'll be exploring how these theories really play out in everyday life
Yeah.
and why sometimes, even when you know the right thing to do,
Right.
it's still so hard to actually change your behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to be covering some big ones. The health belief model, locus of control, theory of planned behavior, self-efficacy theory, and then that really interesting transtheoretical model, which looks at change as like a process, not a
Yeah.
one-time thing.
Okay, so I think to start, let's think about a scenario that I bet we've all been in. It's a beautiful day. You're heading to the beach. You know you should put on sunscreen. Hmm, maybe you don't. Or maybe you just put on a little bit and then call it a day. Why do we do that? The health belief model, this is what this is all about.
Yeah, so the health belief model basically suggests that any decision about health, whether it's sunscreen or something else, is guided by a few beliefs, like really key beliefs.
Okay.
First, there's this idea of perceived susceptibility.
Okay.
Like, how likely do you really think you are to get sunburned?
Yeah.
Or skin cancer,
Yeah.
down the line.
Right, yeah. And that perception of risk, I mean, sometimes it's not logical.
Totally.
I mean, some people I know are so diligent about sunscreen.
Oh my God, yeah.
And then other people just don't seem to worry about it.
Exactly. And the health belief model, or HBM for short,
Mm.
gets even more interesting when you add this idea of perceived severity.
Oh.
So if you get sunburned, do you just think, well, it's just a little annoying? Or do you think it's like a really serious health threat?
Yeah.
So the HBM says that basically, if you believe that the consequences are really severe, you're way more likely to do something about it.
Right.
But if you don't think it's that serious,
Yeah.
then you probably won't feel like you need to change what you're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Even if, intellectually, that it's the right thing to do.
It's like, why even bother with a healthy diet if you don't even think it'll make a difference?
Exactly. And of course, then there's that, classic, we all do it, that cost-benefit analysis.
Right.
You weigh the benefits getting a tan, not having to, stop what you're doing to reapply against, the downsides, sunburn, wrinkles, higher risk of skin cancer.
Yeah. But I think that's what's so interesting because those, costs and benefits aren't always objective.
Totally.
Like, what's a huge hassle to me might be no big deal to you.
Exactly, yeah. So the HBM knows that our decisions about health are made in this, whole context of other things too.
Right.
So cultural norms.
Yeah.
In some societies, being tan is the best thing.
Right.
Which means that the perceived severity of sun damage
Is lower.
is totally downplayed.
Yeah.
And you can't forget about things like personal experience, what
Yeah.
you see on TV, on the internet, even marketing and ads. That can all totally change your perception.
Right. It's like we're not just making these decisions in a vacuum, isolated.
Right.
All of our beliefs are being shaped all the time
Constantly.
by so many different
And then on top of all that, your own sense of self-efficacy is also a big deal.
Yeah.
If you don't think you can actually do the thing you need to do, like always put on sunscreen or not eat that extra cookie,
Right.
then those barriers are just going to seem impossible to overcome.
Right.
Doesn't matter how well you understand the risks.
So how are researchers actually using the HBM? Is it just to explain why we do things? Or can it actually help people change their behaviors?
No, that's the really cool part. It's not just a theory.
Yeah.
Back in 2002, these researchers, Williamson and Wardle, they actually used the HBM to try and predict who would get screened for, colon cancer.
Okay.
And they actually, had some success with that.
Yeah.
It meant that the model actually helped to explain why some people are more proactive about their health than others.
Yeah.
And that's really valuable because it gives us a structure for how we can design interventions.
Right.
If we understand people's beliefs,
Yeah.
we can figure out how to change them.
So instead of just being wear sunscreen, we have to target those beliefs
Yeah.
that are actually making people resistant to that message,
Exactly.
address the cultural norms, highlight the real risks.
Exactly. Now, let's change gears a bit.
Okay.
How much control do you feel like you have over your health?
Okay.
Do you feel like it's totally in your hands, like you're the one making the choices?
Okay.
Or is it like fate, luck, things outside your control?
Okay, got it.
This is the idea behind locus of control.
Okay, so if I believe that my actions make a big difference, that I'm responsible for what happens with my health, that's an internal locus of control.
That's it. It's like I'm the one who makes things happen.
Okay, yeah.
But if you think that your health is mostly determined by outside stuff,
Yeah.
you know, you got sick because of bad luck, or you have a family history you can't change.
Yeah.
That's an external locus of control.
Okay.
It can feel like you're just kind of along for the ride,
Right.
hoping for the best, but don't have a lot of control.
And we're not judging one as better or worse, right?
No, not at all.
It's just about understanding how these beliefs might be, making you approach things differently.
Absolutely. Like, think about it. Someone with a really strong internal locus of control, they're probably more likely to go out and find information about their health, make their doctor's appointments, follow all the treatment plans. They want to take action.
Right, but if you have an external locus of control,
Yeah,
you might just wait to see what happens.
totally. But keep in mind, most people fall somewhere in between the two.
Okay.
It's not like you're one or the other,
Right.
but knowing where you are on that line can be really useful.
Okay.
It might explain why you're like super on top of some things with your health, but totally lost with others.
Okay. So if we're talking about feeling in control, that leads us perfectly into the next theory, the theory of planned behavior.
You're totally right. Have you ever wondered why some people just nail those New Year's resolutions?
Yeah,
But then other people can be super motivated and still struggle to change.
totally.
Well, the theory of planned behavior, or TPB, says that it all comes down to your intentions.
Okay.
How much you intend to change is the biggest predictor of whether you actually will. But those intentions are shaped by a few things.
Okay, well, let's break it down. Attitudes have to be a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I think exercise is boring, I am not going to stick with a new workout, even if I know it's good for me.
That's exactly right. Your attitude towards whatever it is you're trying to change, whether you see it as positive or negative, is huge in shaping your intentions. But the TPB doesn't stop there. It also thinks about these things called subjective norms.
Subjective norms, that sounds kind of complicated.
It's actually pretty simple. It's like social pressure.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like this. You're trying to quit smoking.
Okay.
You think, I know it's bad. I want to quit.
Yeah.
But then all your friends smoke. You don't want them to think differently of you. That social pressure can be a huge barrier.
So even if I believe it's good for me, if my friends aren't on board, it might not be enough.
Exactly. And then there's one more piece of the TBB, perceived behavioral control. Remember, self-efficacy.
Yeah.
It's back.
Right.
It's not just about your intentions and social pressure. It's about how much you believe you can actually do the thing.
Right.
Like if you think, there's no way I can resist those snacks at night,
Yeah.
you're probably not going to be able to change your eating, even if you really want to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the TPB says that all three of these are attitudes, the norms we're surrounded by, and how much control we feel we have, all work together to shape our intentions, which then determine our behavior.
It makes you realize how much more is going on, like, under the surface
Oh, that
than we
is.
probably realize.
Definitely.
We just think of behavior change as, like, willpower.
Willpower.
But it's way more than that.
So much more. And the best part is, research actually supports this. It's not always a perfect prediction, of course.
Yeah.
But it gives us a really useful way to understand those intentions and figure out how to make interventions that actually work.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, eat your veggies, we might need to help people change their attitudes, teach them how to deal with the pressure from friends, and help them feel more in control.
It's like we need to, like, address the whole person,
Well-
not just the behavior we're trying to change.
Absolutely.
And speaking of believing in yourself, let's talk about self-efficacy. Remember that feeling when you finally learned how to ride a bike? How did that confidence affect how much you kept trying? That's self-efficacy in action.
Exactly. It's basically like, do you believe in yourself?
Yeah.
Can you succeed at this specific task?
Yeah.
When it comes to health, self-efficacy can make the difference between sticking with it or giving up after a week,
Right.
or managing a condition, or feeling totally helpless.
So where does self-efficacy come from? Is it just something we're born with, or can we get more of it?
Albert Bandura, he's the one who really came up with this theory.
Right.
He said there are 4 sources of self-efficacy,
Yeah.
and they all apply to health. First, there are mastery experiences.
Okay, so those are the times when we actually succeed at something.
Yes.
Like if I actually cook a healthy meal and I like it,
Yeah.
that would make me more confident that I can make healthy choices in the future.
Exactly. Any success, no matter how small,
Yeah.
makes you believe you can do it.
Right.
It's like little pieces that build up your self-efficacy.
So the more we succeed, the more we think we can succeed in the future. But what if we're struggling to even get started?
Well, that's where the other sources of self-efficacy come in.
Yeah.
A big one is vicarious reinforcement. It's basically about watching other people, especially people you admire, succeed at the same thing you're trying to do.
Okay.
Think about those weight loss shows where you see these normal people transforming their bodies.
Oh, right, right. Those shows can be so inspiring.
Yeah.
Because you think, if they can do it, I can too.
Yeah,
Gives you hope.
totally. And it doesn't have to be a show. It could be your friend that quit smoking or someone in your family who's like managing their diabetes well. Seeing those examples can be really powerful.
It makes you realize how important it is to be around people who are doing what you want to be doing.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of support, there's also social persuasion. This is when you get encouragement from others. It's about whether people believe in you.
So it's like having a coach who believes in you, that can make all the difference.
Exactly. That kind of like positive reinforcement
Yeah.
from people you trust. It can really boost your self-efficacy. But it's not all about positive stuff. Our emotions play a big role too.
What do you mean?
Think about it. If you're like anxious or stressed,
Yeah.
it's way harder to believe in yourself.
Right. Like if I'm already feeling down,
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to have a ton of faith in my ability to change.
Exactly. Those negative feelings can really hurt your self-efficacy. Imagine you're trying to get to the gym,
Okay.
but you feel intimidated when you get there. All that self-doubt might make you less likely to go back.
So we have to create a space where we feel safe
Safe and supported.
to try new things and not worry about what people think.
That's a great point. It's not all about willpower. It's about creating the right conditions for success, both inside yourself and outside.
I like that. We're really seeing how all these pieces fit together.
Absolutely. And now, on to our last theory for this part, the Transtheoretical Model. Have you ever tried to break a habit or start a new one, and it felt like you were going in circles?
Oh yeah, I know that feeling well.
Yeah, you make progress, then you mess up, then you start over. That's what the Transtheoretical Model is all about.
It's basically saying that change doesn't happen in a straight line.
Right, you don't just like wake up one day a totally different person.
Yeah.
The Transtheoretical Model, TTM for short, says that behavior change is a journey. You go through stages, and everyone goes through these stages at their own pace.
Okay.
Some people, they fly through it.
Yeah.
Others get stuck in a stage for a long time.
So what are these stages exactly?
There are 5 of them: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance.
Okay.
Think of it like climbing a mountain. You don't just appear at the top.
Right, right.
You have to go step by step.
So where does this climb begin?
It starts in the bottom with pre-contemplation. In this stage, you aren't even thinking about change.
Oh, okay.
You might not think there's a problem, or you just don't care enough to do anything about it. Maybe you know you should work out more, but it's just not something you're thinking about.
Right. It's not even on your radar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then something happens, and you start to see things differently.
Okay.
Maybe you see a news report about how good exercise is, or your friend asks you to go to the gym with them. Now you're thinking about it, but you're not quite ready to do anything. That's contemplation.
So you know there might be an issue,
Yeah.
but you're not ready to take action yet.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like when you realize you spend too much time on your phone,
Yeah.
but you don't delete the apps.
Right. Exactly.
Then you move up the mountain to preparation.
Okay.
This is where you make plans, gather stuff you need. You might look up gyms, buy some new workout clothes, pick a day to start. You're getting ready.
So you've decided to climb the mountain.
Yeah,
You're getting your backpack ready.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then you take your first step. That's the action stage. You're actually doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Going to the gym, not drinking soda, meditating. This is where all your planning pays off.
But it's also when things can get really hard.
Totally.
Because it's one thing to get started,
Yeah,
but it's way harder to keep going.
you're totally right. That's where the last stage comes in maintenance. This is about making those new habits stick and not going back to your old ways.
Yeah.
You've reached the top of the mountain. Now you have to figure out how to stay there.
So this is where all those self-efficacy skills really matter.
You got it. You have to believe that you can keep these changes going,
Right.
even when you're tempted to go back. And here's the cool thing about the TTM. It knows that messing up is totally normal.
Okay.
It's not failing. It's just a little detour.
So if I eat a cookie, it doesn't mean I should just give up.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You might just have to go back a step or two,
Right.
maybe back to preparation or even contemplation. The important thing is to realize it's just temporary and get back on track. The TTM says that change is a process, and sometimes you have to go back before you can move forward.
That's a really good message.
Yeah.
Especially if you're struggling to make things stick. It's not about being perfect. It's about being persistent and not beating yourself up.
Exactly. And the TTM isn't just about understanding your own journey. It can also be used to help other people. Imagine you're a doctor and your patient is trying to quit smoking. Knowing what stage they're in helps you to know what kind of support they need.
Right. Like you wouldn't give the same advice to someone who's just thinking about quitting compared to someone who's already been smoke-free for 6 months.
Exactly. The TTM is like a roadmap for behavior change.
And that wraps up our look at all these really interesting theories. But there's still more to talk about.
Right. This is just the beginning. But stay tuned because we're about to dive into how we learn behaviors and why knowing what's good for you isn't always enough to change what you do.
So we talked about beliefs and intentions and self-efficacy, but how do we actually learn these behaviors in the first place? It can't just be about deciding to change.
Yeah, you're right. All those theories were really focused on what's going on inside us.
Yeah.
But what about all this stuff around us? Like the stuff that shapes our actions without us even noticing? You said over some really interesting stuff about behavioral and social learning theories, which get into exactly that.
So it's less about what we're thinking and more about our experiences, the people we're around.
Yeah, it's that monkey see, monkey do kind of thing.
Okay.
The behaviorist perspective, which was huge in psychology, is all about how our environment shapes what we do through cues and rewards and punishments. Remember Pavlov's dogs?
Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah.
For Psych 101.
So they learned to associate the bell with food, and eventually the bell alone would make them drool.
Okay. But how does that apply to smoking?
Well, think about all the things a smoker might connect with lighting up.
Okay.
Could be the time of day or after a meal or hanging out with friends who smoke or even just seeing a pack of cigarettes. All those cues that were originally meaningless get linked to that good feeling you get from nicotine.
So even without the nicotine, just being in that situation can make you crave a cigarette.
Exactly. Your brain makes this connection, like this situation means that reward. And then there's operant conditioning, which is all about how actions are made stronger through rewards or weaker through punishments.
Okay.
With smoking, think about how immediately rewarding that first puff is.
Yeah.
You get a hit of dopamine, which makes you feel good.
Right.
This reinforces the behavior, making them more likely to do it again.
It's like a cycle. The cue makes you want it, then smoking gives you the reward, and then the reward makes you connect the cue and the action even more. It makes sense why addiction is so hard to beat.
And it's not all about pleasure either.
Yeah.
There's also negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Think about the awful withdrawal when someone tries to quit.
Right.
All that anxiety, irritability, trouble focusing.
Yeah.
Lighting up makes all that go away, which again makes them want to smoke more.
So you learn to connect smoking with feeling good and getting rid of feeling bad. It's like a double whammy. But how can we use this to help people be more healthy? Is it just about willpower?
It's not all about willpower. Operant conditioning can also be used to change behavior. One way is called the token economy. You see it a lot in hospitals or rehab centers.
I think I've heard of that. It's like getting points for doing something good and you can trade them in for something you want, right?
That's it. Imagine you're recovering from surgery and the doctor wants you to get out of bed and walk around more. You could get a token for every lap you walk. Okay. Then you can use those tokens for things like watching a movie or getting to choose what you eat. It sounds pretty simple, but research shows it actually works, especially when you're first starting a new habit.
It's like turning health into a game, which could be motivating, especially when it takes so long to see real results. Like with weight loss, you don't see a big difference right away.
Right.
But those little rewards can keep you going. You mentioned social learning theory before, though. Is that different than just seeing something and copying it?
Social learning theory goes deeper than just copying. It's about role models and something called vicarious reinforcement. We're more likely to copy behavior when we see other people getting rewarded for it, especially if we look up to them.
So if I see someone I respect who lost weight and they seem so much happier, I'm more likely to think I can do it too.
Yeah, their success makes you think, maybe I can do that too.
Yeah.
This is why role models are so important when we're talking about health. Think about those campaigns with athletes or celebrities promoting a healthy lifestyle,
Right.
especially with young people. That can be super influential.
And it applies to your friends too. If your friends make healthy choices, that becomes normal and you're more likely to do it too. But if your friends have unhealthy habits, it can be really hard to be different.
It can.
Speaking of knowing what's better for you, we haven't talked about the biology at all.
Ah, the biology, often forgotten, but
Yep.
so important. The stuff you sent over mentioned things like genetic predispositions and neurotransmitter imbalances,
Yeah.
and even bias in healthcare settings.
So it's not always about willpower or making good choices. There's all this stuff going on that we don't even know about.
There is, but knowing about it can help us.
Right.
Let's start with genetic predisposition. This is the idea that some people are just more likely to have certain health problems or addictions. It's not like it determines what happens, but it does have an influence.
So are you saying I could be predisposed to nicotine addiction?
It's possible.
So that would make it even harder to quit.
It could. And even though we can't change our genes, knowing about them can help us make smarter choices. For example, if heart disease runs in your family, you might be extra careful about what you eat and how much you exercise.
So if you know your weaknesses, you can plan ahead. What about those neurotransmitter imbalances? I remember that from school, but how do they actually affect our health choices?
Neurotransmitters are the messengers in our brains.
Right.
They control our mood and motivation and how we feel pleasure.
So if they're not balanced, it can mess up our behavior.
Exactly. Take dopamine, for example. That's the feel-good one we talked about before.
Right.
Imbalances in dopamine are really connected to addiction. If someone naturally has less dopamine, they might look for things that give them that dopamine rush, like gambling or shopping or drugs.
So it's not that they're bad or lack willpower. Their brain is just different.
Exactly. And even in healthcare, things aren't always simple. Did you know that biases doctors and nurses have can affect how they interact with patients?
Wait, doctors and nurses can be biased? I thought they were supposed to be objective.
They try to be, but they're human too.
Right.
And we all have these things called cognitive biases. Basically, they're shortcuts our brains use to simplify information.
Okay.
Sometimes those shortcuts can lead to mistakes.
So what kind of biases are we talking about?
A common one is confirmation bias. It's when you favor information that supports what you already believe,
Mm.
and you ignore or downplay things that challenge your beliefs. We all do it, not just doctors.
So if a doctor believes that being overweight is because of a lack of willpower, they might not consider other things when they're treating someone.
That's a risk. Or they might think a patient's symptoms are because of their weight, even when there's no connection.
Okay.
We all have our own beliefs, and sometimes they can make us see things the wrong way.
That's kind of scary. It's like if the doctor thinks your weight is the problem, they might treat you differently, which could actually make you less healthy.
That's the danger of bias. It can make things unfair and stop people from getting the best care.
This is all pretty intense. We've gone from beliefs to social stuff to learned behaviors to our brains to bias in healthcare. Behavior change is way more complicated than I thought.
It is. What's amazing to me is how complex people are, especially when it comes to health. It's not just about knowing what's good for you. It's about all this other stuff. Biology, psychology, social stuff, environment. They all shape our choices.
It's almost too much, right? It's like we can know everything about eating healthy and why smoking is bad, but if we're surrounded by junk food or everyone around us has unhealthy habits, it's a really hard fight.
It can be. That's why we have to look at this from all sides. We need to address those individual beliefs and motivations, but we also have to create environments that help people. We need to use the power of role models and make sure everyone has access to the resources they need to make healthier choices.
So we need to change the person and the system around them.
Exactly. It's about making it easier to be healthy.
It feels like we've uncovered this whole secret world of things that influence our health choices, like things we don't even realize are happening. But even when you have support, making those changes stick is hard. I definitely struggle with that. So where does motivation come in? Like, how do we set ourselves up to actually succeed?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can have all the information we can want to change, but if you don't have a plan and it's so easy to go back to what you were doing before.
Right.
This is where understanding how motivation works and how to set goals really matters.
Yeah.
Have you heard of SMART goals?
Yeah, SMART goals. I've mostly heard of that for work stuff, though.
Right.
Like when we're setting goals for a project, how does that work for health goals?
It actually applies really well. Let's say your goal is eat healthier.
Okay.
Sounds good, but it's super vague. Using SMART goals makes you get way more specific.
Yeah.
So instead of that, your goal could be, I'm going to eat at least 5 servings of fruits and veggies every day for a week.
Okay.
Big difference, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you're taking that big idea
Yeah,
and making it something I can actually measure.
exactly.
Yeah.
5 servings of fruits and veggies, you can actually track that.
Right.
See if you're doing it. Plus, it's actually achievable. It's realistic.
Right.
You can probably fit it into your day without changing everything.
Yeah.
And we know that setting goals that are impossible just makes you want to give up.
So specific, measurable, achievable. What's the R?
Relevant. The goal has to actually matter to you. It has to connect with your values and what you want to achieve with your health. If your focus is losing weight, your goal might be about cutting back on soda or getting more exercise,
Right.
not just eat healthier.
So it has to be important to me,
Yeah.
not just something I think I should be doing.
Exactly. And the T is for time-bound, right? So instead of saying, I'm going to do this forever, you commit to those 5 servings for 1 week.
Yeah.
It's a little challenge to focus on. Having a deadline helps you stay on track.
I like that. It feels less overwhelming
Yeah.
than thinking about having to be perfect forever.
And once you've done it for a week, you can look at it again. Maybe change the goal a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a process. You set the goal, you try to achieve it, you see how you did, and then you adjust. And over time, you build up those healthy habits.
It's funny, throughout this whole deep dive, the thing that keeps coming up for me is how important our beliefs are.
Yeah,
It's not enough to just know the facts. You have to believe that you can do it.
that's a really good point. There's a lot of research on the mind-body connection and how our thoughts affect our health. For example, studies show that people who feel in control of their health are more likely to do things like get screenings and take their medicine and keep up with those healthy habits.
So if 2 people have the same condition, they could have totally different outcomes.
Yeah,
Just based on how much they believe they can manage their health.
exactly. And it's not just physical health. Our mindset is also really important for dealing with stress, coping with chronic illness, and even recovering when things go wrong.
It's like what we believe becomes reality.
Right.
If we think we can't change anything, we're not even going to try. But if we believe we have some power, then we're more likely to take action and keep going, even when it's hard.
It shows how much our mental health and physical health are connected.
Totally.
They affect each other all the time.
So if our listener is feeling kind of overwhelmed right now or discouraged about making these changes, where should they start? What's the one thing they should take away from this?
I would say the most important thing is to work on that feeling of self-efficacy. Start small, set goals you can actually achieve. Don't try to change everything at once. Be around people who support you, friends, family, a support group, whoever makes you feel good. And don't be afraid to ask for help from a therapist or a counselor. They can help you get past those mental blocks and figure out a plan that really works for you.
It's a good reminder that you don't have to do this alone.
You don't.
There are people who can help.
There are.
It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. There are so many ways to be healthier.
Yeah.
You just have to find yours.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into health behavior change.
It's a fascinating topic, and I hope it's made you think and maybe even feel a little more empowered. Remember, knowledge is power. Understanding all this psychology can help you be healthier and happier.
We'll be back next time with a deep dive into another one of your questions. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep digging deeper into the things that interest you.